Hey, welcome to the shop. In this video, I'm gonna walk through everything that I would show you if you were sitting here with me and wanted to run your first aluminum TIG welds. Every TIG weld starts with the tungsten electrode, so let's talk about that. There are a lot of different kinds of them, but there are even more arguments on internet forums about which one to use, and trying to digest TIG welding advice from Facebook groups is not a good use of your mental calories. Now, most types will work just fine. I look for a tungsten electrode that will work for any application, AC or DC, so I can easily switch between materials. I've settled on these multi-mix blends. There's this CK laser, there's a Blue Demon multi-mix. This one's from Benchmark Abrasives. I'm sure there are plenty of other brands. A lot of them probably come from the same place, but these work really well across the board. And I go with 3/32 of an inch because I'm not typically welding over 200 amps. If you were welding thicker stuff, I might go with 1/8 inch diameter electrodes to absorb a little bit more heat, but 3/32 multi-mix blend works well for me. Now, lanthanated and seriated also work fine. Thoriated can work okay, but I don't like it as well on AC. Or you can get one of these multi-blend packs right here and just try all the kinds and buy more of what you like. And when I start with a new tungsten electrode, the first thing I do is I cut it in half, and that allows me to use a shorter back cap like this. If you're just practicing on the bench, that probably isn't necessary, but it's pretty helpful to fit into tighter areas. Now, as far as tungsten prep, I use a tungsten grinder like this. It's not necessary to buy this. I used a bench grinder for a lot of years, but this can sit right by my welding table and it saves me a lot of time. I actually sharpen both ends. This does allow you to flip it over and use it, but the main reason I do that is it's much easier to slide into the collet on the torch right here. Now, obviously, if I had a big old goober on the end of it, I wouldn't turn it around and shove it in there and scratch everything up, but generally speaking, this has worked really well for me for a long time. Now let's take a look at the torch setup here. So this is my torch body. These come in different sizes, but with any of them, you can get two different types of collet bodies that actually hold your tungsten in place. This is a standard collet body, so it has those holes on the outside for gas to come through. This one right here is a gas lens. It has that diffuser there to give you a steadier flow of gas. This is a huge benefit on stainless steel or titanium and even on carbon steel, but on aluminum, it really doesn't offer a whole lot of benefit, and the aluminum can actually spit back and start to plug up that diffuser over time. So I prefer to use a regular collet body whenever I'm welding aluminum. I've seen excellent aluminum TIG welders that use either setup. It's really not the deciding factor. So just pick one when you're learning, and then once you get a little bit of time under your belt, try them both and keep using what you like. Now, as far as the cup goes, I use a smaller one around a number 5 to a number 7. And that's because it controls where the gas flow goes, which will control your etching bend that you'll see in a little while. I see a lot of beginners throwing on a gas lens and a big cup like this, which I really like this cup on stainless steel and even carbon steel, but for aluminum, you're better off with a small cup like that. Now, the part that actually holds your tungsten in place is a collet. They typically have a split that presses down into a taper to clamp on it. This is a wedge collet, and it doesn't have any split on it, so it just pushes to the side. And from my experience, they hold up a little bit better over heat, but just use whatever you have. And then finally, you have your back cap. Go ahead and thread that in part of the way. Make sure that O-ring goes down into the torch body to seal your gas. Now, with the torch assembled like that, notice how easily that electrode slides in with the taper on both sides. I can position it something like this. Now, the actual extension of your electrode is going to depend a little bit on your joint type. This right here will be a pretty good middle of the road setup for me. This machine has all sorts of different ways that you can manipulate your waveform, but we're just gonna be using the basic setup here. When I go here, I can select AC, because I'm gonna wanna weld on alternating current with aluminum. And then I have 3 settings here: frequency, amperage, and balance. Now, amperage, a good rule of thumb is about 1 amp per thousandth of an inch. So 125 amps for some 1/8 inch thick material. Now, aluminum tends to suck quite a bit of heat, so I'll go over that by maybe even 25 amps here, somewhere around 150. AC balance, this controls, here I can actually go in and it'll show a diagram of this. It controls how much time is spent on electrode positive versus electrode negative. And so I want to set this at 70%. This is a good all-around setting for 70% electrode negative. Now, if you have a Chinese machine or something like that, it'll probably read opposite, so it'll read 30% for electrode positive, but a Miller or like this HTP, things like that will read 70% there. You can tell if you're, backwards of that, if your tungsten electrode just balls up all of a sudden. With the balance backwards, it hardly melted the material and the tungsten electrode looks like a Tootsie Pop. Now the reason for this is balance ultimately controls how much heat goes into which side of your arc. So when I have it backwards, it's putting most of the heat into the tungsten and not enough into the metal. And so I just need to adjust that to be the opposite. Then frequency is how fast that happens, right? So I'm gonna set this right to 90 Hertz. Anywhere between 60 and 120 should work just fine for you. As far as shielding gas, I'm running straight argon here, and my gas flow rate is set to about 2.5 times my cup size. And so for a number 5 cup, I'm right around 12 to 13 CFH. Now this regulator is really quite good, but a lot of the rotometer style, or the ones with the floating balls that are very inexpensive, can be notoriously inaccurate at these low argon flows. So if you find that you're getting a lot of dirt and pepper in your weld, you might need to turn it up to a lot higher reading than you expect to get the actual gas flow that you need. One thing you'll find is that when you're learning, you need a lot of practice. So I buy these pre-cut coupons right here. I'll put a link in the description, or you can just buy some extra material for your projects, but you want to have plenty of material around to practice with. As far as material prep goes, a quick wipe down with a little acetone or even alcohol, some ethanol, something like that, is plenty in most cases. If you have older material that's really corroded, you may want to use a wire brush. Now, if you do use a wire brush, use one with stainless steel bristles that's dedicated just for aluminum prep. But in my experience, it's often a lot less necessary than it's made out to be. Now, before welding with a sharp tungsten electrode like this on aluminum, a lot of people like to turn their balance actually way the opposite direction of where you'd have it, and then let this melt a little ball on the end. And that can be nice, but a lot of people run with a point and get a good result. A lot of people run with a ball and get good results. So I think for a beginner, it's not a good use of time. I think you're better off to just leave the point, let it ball itself a little bit and roll with it. But if you wanted to put a little ball on there, all you do is set that balance, like in my case, it'd be to 30%, and then strike an arc and be real gentle with the pedal till you see it turn into a ball. Now, when it comes to welding technique, there are really 3 things that matter a whole lot more than all the stuff that guys are talking about in videos, and that is your arc length, how far your tungsten electrode is from your workpiece, your angle, right? Are you pointed like this? That can work on DC welding on stainless in a lot of cases, but on aluminum, you got to be coming just about 10 degrees off of vertical there. And the third thing is balancing your travel speed with your amperage. Right? If you have a lot of amperage, you can travel pretty quickly, and you better. If you are going to travel slowly, you better use a little less amperage so that your heat doesn't run away from you. And when you're starting out on cold material, you're going to be moving more slowly for the given amperage than as you progress through the middle, then even more so as you reach the end of your weld. Now, before we even worry about adding filler, we're going to focus on those elements of technique and practice them. Now, the first thing that I recommend you do when you're getting started is just form a puddle and try to see that puddle and maintain the size. Let's do that a couple of times. So before it ever creates a puddle, you'll see it etching a frosty zone. That's because aluminum has an oxide layer on the surface, and that's why you weld it with AC, to chip that little oxide away and etch it off. And so you'll see that work before the puddle forms, and then you form a puddle in the middle of that. So see, I have a few puddles that are just about the same size, and until you can consistently do that, there's no point in trying to run a bead or do anything else. Once you're able to do this, let's go ahead and try to push a puddle along here and maintain a consistent width without adding any filler metal. So in the beginning, I had to sit there a little bit and start moving slowly and then pick up some speed to maintain a consistent width. Let's carry this on through the end of the plate. So as I'm running this, those three important elements of technique, my arc length, how far my tungsten is from the workpiece, as well as my angle right here, my travel angle, and balancing that amperage with travel speed. That's what it takes to get a consistent run like this. And until you're able to do that, there's no point in trying to add filler and stack dimes. A lot of people want to sidestep these basic fundamentals, but there's no way around it, and you're just going to run into a lot of problems if you don't have this down without filler before you start adding it. That being said, let's add some filler. Now this is my filler metal. This is 5356 filler. It'll give you a nicer looking bead than 4043 generally, but there are different properties and they work with different base metals, so be sure to look it up and see what's gonna work best for you. This is 1/16 inch filler. I'd rather use 3/32 inch filler or even 1/8 inch on this 1/8 inch thick plate, but I ran out, so I'm using this 1/16 inch today. That's gonna force me to push a little bit more filler. Now the way I hold it is I put it right here between my thumb and index finger, and then pinch it between my third and fourth fingers, and that lets me just use my thumb to push the wire if I need to feed it. Learning to do that takes a bit of practice, and it's really not that important at this stage of the game, so I wouldn't waste my time on it until you are able to run a decent bead, and then you can work on that. Pause here till I get a good weld puddle, and then add the filler directly into that puddle, and then step forward a little, add it again, and continue to step forward like that, attempting to keep as consistent of a bead as I can, and that's why that first exercise is so important.
Now it's a little bit hard to tell from the video, but I'm pushing at least an inch of filler metal into each dab by feeding it in. That's why you want to have a larger diameter filler than what I have on hand here. This is also leaving those little droplets out in front, which is less than ideal, but the basic technique is the same, and if I had a little bit larger filler, you wouldn't have to push nearly as much.
Yeah, I just dipped my tungsten. That's gonna happen, expect it. What happened there is I actually ended up pushing my little coupon forward. Not a bad idea to clamp those down, but you get the idea there. Now when I go to run a T-joint like this, I need to do two things. First thing is extend my electrode out just a little bit further like that. That'll let me get down into that root of that joint and maintain a nice short arc length. And the other thing is turn up the amperage on my machine. I'm gonna turn it clear up to 170 amps here for this 1/8 inch thick material, and then control it with the foot pedal. Now the reason I need more amperage is I'm heating up a lot more material in here, and it's being carried away in 3 different directions, and aluminum can really soak up the heat pretty fast. Higher amperage also makes it a lot easier to tack without any filler metal. See, if I was running low amperage, it'd just start melting away from each other, but when I hit it hot and fast, it just tacks together like that. Pretty handy. A little bit of a weak tack, but good enough for something like this. Now it's certainly harder to maintain consistency with that smaller filler metal. I'd definitely recommend the 3/32 or 1/8 inch filler, but we made do here today. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this or learned something, let me know by hitting that thumbs up below or leaving me a comment. And if you'd like to learn faster in my online courses, be sure to check out the link in the description. I have a full money back guarantee if you find they're not for you. And I'll also have a link to some equipment down there that I used here in this video. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.